June of 2014, Derek and Maria Broadus believed they had found their dream home. The 6-bedroom Dutch colonial house at 657 Boulevard sat on a tree-lined street in Westfield, New Jersey, only a few blocks away from where Maria grew up. It was the kind of neighborhood where children rode bikes through the streets and families stayed for generations. The sale of the home was not public. A for sale sign was never placed in front of the house. The couple and their 3 children had planned to move into their new home after some light renovations. One night, while checking the mail after painting the inside of the house, Derek found a white envelope, simply addressed to the new owner. The letter began politely, welcoming them into the neighborhood, but as Derek read on, the tone shifted. The writer claimed that their family had been obsessively watching the house for generations, passing the duty down from grandfather to father, and now, the author. The letter referenced the home's history, its renovations, and unsettlingly, the Broadus' 3 young children, whom they referred to as, quote, young blood. The letter ended with a chilling signature, signed off by the Watcher. Terrified, Derek contacted the police. Soon after, he and Maria learned that the previous owners, the Woods, had also received a letter from someone who'd called themselves the Watcher, just days before they moved out. In the letter, the Watcher thanked them for taking care of the home for 23 years. The police instructed the Broaduses to not tell neighbors about the letter, as anybody could be a suspect. Weeks later, a second letter arrived. In the letter, the Watcher addressed Derek and Maria by name. It referenced their children's nicknames, and it asked if they've found what's in the walls yet. The Watcher described seeing one child painting on an easel inside the house, which was not easily visible from the outside. The letter detailed the layout of the home, asked which bedrooms the children would sleep in, and warned that the basement was far enough away that nobody would hear them scream. The Watcher claimed to pass by the house daily, declaring it as their obsession. The letter was threatening enough that the Broaduses decided to not move in, but they would continue making renovations. A third letter followed, asking why they had abandoned the home, saying that 657 Boulevard is missing you, and would go on to demand that they stop making changes to the house. The police would focus on a nearby family, the Langfords, whose house had a direct view of the property. Though police interviews raised suspicions, there was no physical evidence. Later, DNA testing from an envelope suggested that the sender may be female, and eventually, the Langfords were ruled out entirely. Becoming increasingly desperate, Derek launched his own investigation, installing cameras, mapping sightlines, and consulting private investigators, former FBI agents, and forensic linguists. Experts suggest that the letters were written by an older, well-read individual with resentment toward wealth and change, but still, no suspect could be confirmed. The stress of the situation took a heavy toll on the family. The Broaduses would never move into the house, and they would eventually list it for sale. Rumors spread throughout the community. Some even accused the couple of writing the letters themselves as a part of an elaborate scam. When the story went public through a lawsuit against the previous owners, media attention surrounding the story exploded. In February of 2017, after years of silence, another letter arrived, angrier and more unhinged than before. The letter would reference the family's legal actions, surveillance efforts, and even threaten accidents, illness, and death. Then, once again, the Watcher vanished. To this day, the Watcher has never been identified. The Broaduses eventually rented out the home, later selling it at a significant financial loss in 2019. The mystery of the Watcher remains unsolved. Andrew Gosden was just 14 years old when he vanished without a trace. On the morning of 14th of September 2007, Andrew left his family home in Bowlby, a quiet suburb of Doncaster in South Yorkshire. The day started ordinarily, though his mother stated that he was particularly irritable when he woke up. He got ready as if he were heading to school. He said goodbye and walked out of the house at around 8:05 a.m, just as he always did. But Andrew never arrived at school that day. Instead of boarding the usual bus, Andrew walked to a cash machine and withdrew £200, nearly the maximum amount that he could take out. He then returned home briefly, changed out of his school uniform, placed it neatly in the washing machine, and once again left. This time he was wearing a black Slipknot t-shirt, black jeans, and was carrying a satchel decorated with metal band patches. He took his wallet, keys, and a PlayStation Portable, but left behind around £100 in cash that he had saved from his birthdays. He did not take a coat, his PSP charger, or his passport. At 8:30 a.m, Andrew was captured on a neighbour's CCTV camera walking away from his home for the final time. He made his way to Doncaster railway station, where he purchased a one-way ticket to London. The ticket clerk would later recall offering him a return ticket for just 50 pence more, but Andrew declined. He boarded the train alone at 9:35 a.m, quietly playing games on his PSP during the journey. By 11:20 a.m, Andrew arrived at King's Cross Station in London, and CCTV footage would show him leaving the main concourse just 5 minutes later. The image of Andrew calmly walking into the city would be the last confirmed sighting of him. Andrew's disappearance shocked those who knew him. He was described as quiet, intelligent, and deeply routine-oriented. He was a gifted student with a perfect attendance and was expected to excel academically. He showed no signs of depression or rebellion and would rarely go out alone. He would never go out without telling his parents where he was going. When Andrew failed to return home that evening, his family assumed that he was in his room or with a friend. Panic would soon set in when they realized that he hadn't attended school that day. The police were contacted that night, and within hours, missing person leaflets were distributed. 3 days later, investigators confirmed that Andrew had travelled to London. His family immediately went there, handing out flyers around to places he might have visited. Despite extensive searches and national appeals, no confirmed sighting emerged. The police would explore multiple theories. One was that Andrew may have gone sightseeing. He loved London and had family there. Others suggested that he may have travelled to attend a music concert, possibly one taking place there that evening near King's Cross. However, no evidence placed him at any event. Investigators also looked into the possibility that Andrew may have met someone online, but the theory seemed unlikely. Andrew had no email accounts, no social media presence, and showed very little interest in online communication. His Xbox and his PSP were never connected to the internet, and forensic examinations of school and library computers found nothing linking him to online contact. Over the years, hundreds of reported sightings surfaced across the UK, but none could be verified. In December of 2021, 2 men were arrested on suspicion of kidnapping and human trafficking in connection with the case, marking the first arrests ever made. Their devices were seized and examined, but in September of 2023, police confirmed that both men had been eliminated from the inquiry. Andrew Gosden's bank account has never been used since the day that he disappeared. More than 18 years later, his case still remains unsolved. This mystery was suggested by my subscriber Jennifer. Thank you, Jennifer. If you have an interesting story that you'd like me to cover, please let me know in the comments. Thomas Hotard was a 46-year-old safety engineer from Gretna, Louisiana. He was described by his peers as a hard-working family man who was a scoutmaster and was active in his church. But Thomas was hiding a secret. Despite being married with 2 children, Thomas carried on a secret relationship with Audrey Moate, a 31-year-old divorced mother of 3 from Baton Rouge, who he met in 1952 through Thomas's job at a local chemist company. They were also both involved in scouting and were often seen together in town planning scouting trips together. Their relationship, although deeply passionate, remained hidden. They both lied to their families about spending Saturdays together, masking their affair under the guise of work. 3 months before Audrey would vanish, She ominously told her mother that if anything happened to her, she should take the children and leave the area, offering no further explanation. On the morning of 25th of November 1956, Thomas was found dead. He was shot with a shotgun once in the head at close range through the rear window of his car at a secluded spot at Frenia Beach, which was known by locals as Lover's Lane. Audrey was nowhere to be found, but evidence at the scene suggested that there was a struggle. Her crumpled clothes were on the floorboard, and her personal items lay scattered on the ground next to the car. The front car seat was folded down, and its keys were found in the ignition. At the time, the investigators were unsure who the woman's clothing belonged to. It appeared as though she tried to flee the scene, spilling the contents of her purse in the process. 50 feet away, her bare footprints were found along those with heavy boot marks. A further 5 feet away was an area where it appeared that a scuffle had taken place, and a set of car keys was discovered. The footprints led to a single motorcycle track on the road to the highway, implying someone had pursued her. The day prior, on 24th of November, was Audrey's birthday. She and Thomas met around 7:30 a.m. at a restaurant in La Place. They would shortly drive to the secluded location where Thomas's car would later be found by a hunter and his son after they approached the vehicle, noticing that the front passenger side door was open, before they discovered the rest of the scene. It took 10 hours for the investigators to determine that Audrey was the woman that Thomas was with. The investigators would initially suspect the lovers' quarrel, but the chaotic scene indicated that they had been surprised while together. Audrey's car would later be found abandoned at the restaurant where she and Thomas met the day prior. The keys found at the crime scene belonged to her car. In a box on the back seat, Sheriff Percy Herbert found the verses of a song from the musical The King and I, handwritten by her on a small card which reads as a haunting ode to their secret love. The card read, "We kissed in the shadows, we hide from the moon. Our meetings are few and over too soon. We speak in whispers, afraid to be heard. When people are near, we speak not a word." No other trace of Audrey was found. Many of the residents throughout La Place speculated who killed Thomas and what happened to Audrey. There were several speculated sightings of her, but none could be confirmed. On 6th of December, 2 weeks after her disappearance, her former mother-in-law received a strange phone call. The caller claimed to be Audrey and said she was in trouble and needed help. However, she hung up after she was asked for her location. Around the same time, a waitress in New Orleans reported seeing a disheveled woman matching Audrey's description who left quickly when noticed. Over the years, many investigators and people close to the case either retired or died. No new leads would surface until 1989. Marvell Acosta claimed that her father, Ernest Acosta, had information about the case. Before he died in 1980, he told his relatives that his late wife, Caroline, had killed both Audrey and Thomas outside of their home in 1956, and he helped to cover it up. Caroline was known for her violent temperament and carried a gun at all times. Ernest said that he put Thomas's body in his car and drove it back to Frenia Beach, and that he and Caroline hid Audrey's body in a metal fish trap in their yard until the search for her stopped. The next day, the couple stuffed Audrey's body into a 9-foot Civil War cannon and sunk it in the swamp. According to Acosta, Audrey and Thomas had visited their property several times, leading to confrontations whose reasons remain unclear. Though the story of the murder did not match the evidence, retired Sheriff's Deputy Wayne Norwood believes that Ernest was involved, but his belief had never been verified. Several other suspects were considered over the years, including Edmund Dew, who was arrested after an attempted robbery nearby. A black cloth purse, closely matching the description of Audrey's missing purse, was found in his vehicle. Dew confessed under the influence of a truth serum to killing the couple and burying Audrey's body at a dump, though no remains were ever found. Dew would serve 10 years in prison for the attempted murder in an unrelated case, and would later die in 2003. He was never charged in Audrey's disappearance and Thomas's murder, and it is unclear whether he is still a suspect. The scene where Thomas's body was discovered has since changed dramatically and is now submerged by Lake Pontchartrain. As of now, the case remains officially unsolved. Audrey's daughter, Decky, hoped to identify suspected remains in 2011 using DNA, but she passed away in 2019 before the results were revealed. With many of those involved long deceased and crucial evidence lost, the fate of Audrey Moate and the full truth behind Thomas Hotard's murder remain one of Louisiana's most haunting mysteries. On 27th of January 1993, two girls were walking through a wooded area in Wayne Fitzgerald State Park, Illinois, when they made a terrifying discovery. Caught in a bush near the road was the severed head of a woman. She had shoulder-length, reddish-brown hair, and the position of her remains suggested that they had been thrown from a moving vehicle travelling along the adjoining roadway. The police were called shortly after the discovery. Officers searched the surrounding area extensively but were unable to find other body parts. Based on the condition of the remains, investigators believe that the woman had been killed just a few days earlier. An early anthropological analysis estimated the victim to be between 30 to 50 years of age and may have suffered from torticollis or wry neck syndrome, a condition that may have caused her head to tilt permanently to one side. This detail became central to the investigation. Forensic sketches and even a composite model of the woman's head were created, depicting her condition in an exaggerated form. But despite these efforts, no one came forward to identify her. With no name, no missing persons match, and no additional remains, the woman was given a placeholder identity, Ina Jane Doe, named after the nearby village of Ina. Her case would eventually run cold and would remain a mystery for nearly 3 decades. In 2021, forensic experts reopened the case. Forensic genetic genealogical testing was conducted on a new DNA sample extracted from the woman's head. By 2022, a familial match with a sibling ultimately identified the remains to a Susan Hope Lund. They discovered that the original sketches and composite may have done more harm than good. Susan's distinguishing features had likely been overstated, making recognition far less likely. A new, more accurate forensic sketch was then commissioned by artist Carl Kopperman. Susan was a 3-month pregnant, married mother of 3 and was last seen by her family on Christmas Eve of 1992. She was last seen when she left her home in Clarksville, Tennessee, to make the 4-mile journey on foot to pick up last-minute groceries, roughly 170 miles southeast from where her head would later be discovered. Susan would never return home, and she would be reported missing by her husband soon after. Her disappearance would be plagued with false hope. Newspaper articles claimed she had been found in Alabama, others said that she'd been spotted in Kentucky. One report even suggested that Susan had contacted the police herself, saying that she was alive and well. But unfortunately, this couldn't be further from the truth. Multiple searches were conducted over the following months, but the official missing persons case would eventually be closed. Determined to find her, Susan's family never stopped looking. Although Ina Jane Doe has finally been identified, there are still questions that remain unanswered. Why was Susan targeted? Where is the rest of her body? And of course, who killed Susan Lund? Sadly, Susan's husband Paul passed away on 3rd of February 2020, just 2 years before Susan's remains were identified. Although Susan finally got her name back, her story is still unfinished.